Om. Greetings, divine blessed loved ones. I'm Paisley Parvati Devi here with our weekly yoga philosophy share. So if you're just jumping in, every Tuesday I share a new video on Facebook, on my Facebook page Livity Yogini, as well as on my YouTube channel at Livity Yogini, talking about beginners yoga philosophy. And I share from this book, the Yamas and Niyamas, Exploring Yoga's Ethical Practice by Deborah Adele. So if you'd like to see previous videos from this series, I will post the links in the description box for you guys. And in order to follow along, I invite you to like the Facebook page, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and also give me a comment once you're done watching the video. I always love to hear from you and hear about your reflections and experiences with the content. You can also share this with your loved ones, tag someone who you feel like this information might be helpful or relevant to. So grateful to have you here. Just taking a moment to settle in wherever you are. Perhaps closing the eyes if that is safe. Whatever you're doing, standing, sitting, just setting it aside for right now. Just taking a few deep breaths in through the nose and out through the nose. Settling in wherever you are. In through the nose, filling up the belly, chest, lungs. And exhale through the nose, emptying out. Gently drawing the navel to the spine to expel the air fully. And then inhaling again through the nose. The fuller we can make the exhale, the fuller the inhale will be after it. Just taking a moment to ground into this quiet space within ourselves, in the cave of our hearts. Trusting that whatever information needs to come through today will come through. And anything else will just be planted as a seed for you to come back to. Gently blinking the eyes open. Entered in this grounded space with me, ready to be open and receptive to the ancient yogic wisdom that we will be discussing here today. So in my previous videos in this series, I talk in detail about the idea of circular philosophy as it applies to yoga and our Western minds. And I also go into more detail about what exactly the Yamas and Niyamas are. So if you're interested in those, I invite you to go back to previous videos in this series and check those out. Today we're just going to dive into the content. So we are on the fifth yama today, which is called aparigraha, and that translates from Sanskrit to English as non-attachment or non-possessiveness. And again, as far as what the yamas and niyamas actually are, I go into detail in other videos, so you can check those out for yourselves. But just know that aparigraha is the last of the yamas. So once we're done with this chapter, we'll be halfway through the book, you guys. So again, sharing from this book by Deborah Adele, Aparigraha, Non-Possessiveness, Chapter 5. I remember when my children were small and I would pick them up at childcare. It didn't matter how much fun they were having with yummy treats to eat or new toys to explore or new friends to play with. The minute I entered the room, they dropped everything and ran as fast as they could into my waiting arms. Nothing was more important to them than I was. As they grew older, however, the toys became more and more interesting to them, until at times I would show up and they would totally ignore me. Much like small children, we live in a world with an abundance of treats and toys and friends. They are there for us to enjoy, but never in the place of the one who gives these gifts. The jewel of aparigraha invites us to enjoy life to the fullest, and yet always to be able to drop everything and run into the waiting arms of the divine. If we prefer to play with our toys, we have missed the point. Aparigraha, or non-possessiveness, can also be interpreted as non-attachment, non-greed, non-clinging, non-grasping, and non-coveting. We can simply think of it as being able to let go. The sadhus of India recognize how easy it is to become attached to things of this world. Sadhus don the color orange and take vows to renounce all worldly pleasures in favor of the divine. They spend most of their time in the forests, away from any temptations that might become more interesting to them than their companionship with divinity. Although this is an extreme example, it shows one way of staying free from the prison of possessiveness. So in the previous chapter, she discusses a concept called brahmacharya, which can be translated loosely as walking with God. It can also be interpreted as non-excess. And she talks a lot in that chapter about how if you're living in this philosophy of the middle path and non-excess, not ever overindulging and not depriving yourself either, you can get into this mental space of everything just kind of being in the divine flow, feeling like very grateful and appreciative of even the most mundane seeming things, so that we can really just feel like we're in the flow of this more sacred, like inner divine heartbeat, or in the womb of the Divine Mother. And I really feel like this concept goes hand in hand with that, because if we aren't attached to things, we'll have less of a temptation to overindulge in them, right? So we talked about chocolate cake. That was the example that I gave in that chapter. And if you are eating sugar all the time, you just really crave sugar, I can use myself as an example, because I totally have a huge sugar addiction, and I notice that when I eat sugar, I just want more and more and more of it, right? To the point where if I were to eat an entire chocolate cake by myself, by the time I got to that last piece of chocolate cake, I would not feel very good at all. I probably would be like, why did I even want this chocolate cake in the first place? And I wouldn't be able to appreciate it as much as if I had just had one piece of chocolate cake after not eating sugar for a long extended period of time, and then I just eat that one piece of chocolate cake. All of a sudden I'm able to appreciate it so much more. And the way that aparigraha, non-possessiveness, can tie into that is if we are not attached to something, we can be with it or we can do without it. And either way, we kind of stay in the same emotional center within ourselves, because we aren't disappointed if we don't get it, we aren't overly excited if we do get it, and we can just appreciate if we have it, and if we don't have it, then it's not a big deal, you know? So again, coming back to that middle path, not being attached to whatever it is that brings us pleasure, that doesn't mean that we can't ever be without the pleasure. We just aren't as emotionally dependent on that pleasure, right? So she talks about the sadhus in India who are extremely non-possessive, and they're considered ascetics because they actually renounce worldly pleasures. And that's why she says they spend most of their time in the forest, away from any temptations that might become more interesting to them than their companionship with divinity. Although this is an extreme example, it shows one way of staying free from the prison of possessiveness. For those of us who choose to stay immersed in the world, loving and living fully without becoming attached is not an easy thing. When we experience the completeness of being loved, the satisfaction of a superb meal, the acknowledgement of work well done, we can easily want to hold on to these moments and never let them go. It is easy to want the same satisfaction and begin to demand the same fulfillment from these things again and again. But it is the nature of things to change, and by failing to let them change or move on, they begin to disappoint us, and our attempts to hold on make us stale and discontent. What we try to possess possesses us. This is the nature of things to change, and by failing to let them change or move on, they begin to disappoint us, and our attempts to hold on begin to make us stale and discontent. What we try to possess possesses us. How do we move through life loving deeply and engaging fully without getting attached? Looking at the inhalation and exhalation of the breath, The timing of trapeze artists and an ancient practice of catching monkeys can give us glimpses into the ability to let go rather than be attacked. The guideline of aparigraha invites us to let go and pack lightly for our journey through life, all while caring deeply and enjoying fully. The breath as teacher. What if we could trust life like we trust the breath? What if we could take in all the nourishment of the moment and then let it go fully, trusting that more nourishment will come? Just like the breath gives us nourishment, so does life in the form of home, work, school, relationships, routine that brings ease, beliefs, stances, and images of ourselves. There is nourishment until we get attached to these things, often unconsciously, and then disturb ourselves with expectations, opinions, criticisms, disappointments, all because we forget to trust life, exhale, and let go. Like the breath, when it is held too long, the things that nourish us become toxic. Isn't that such a beautiful example? So even the breath, something that we so clearly need to stay alive, can only survive a few minutes without breathing, and yet we exhale with the divine trust, knowing that that next inhale is going to be present for us. So even our very breath, our life-sustaining breath, is not permanent. It's a constant ebb and flow of giving and receiving. Like the breath, when it is held too long, the things that nourish us, when we aren't willing to let them go and change, can become toxic. Aparigraha invites us to practice divine play, experience full intimacy and contact with the present moment, and then to let go so the next thing can come. It is how our adhikara, our competency, grows and how we become more who we are capable of becoming. I have a grand piano that I enjoy playing, but as Yogi Raj Achala reminds me, when it is time to eat, I don't carry the piano to the dining room. Why would I want all that weight on my shoulders? And yet often we do try to carry the piano to the dining room table, so to speak, trying all the different ways we can think of to find some kind of permanence, something to hold on to. But the nature of the realm of aparigraha is impermanence. Everything changes, nothing stays the same. If we can fall back to the breath and watch the belly rise and fall with each inhale and exhale, we can feel the truth of the transience of all things. Hanging in midair. Much like the moment when the breath is completely exhaled, the trapeze artist has a moment when they are suspended in midair. My understanding is that they have let go of one bar. They have to let go of one bar and wait in midair for the next swinging bar to reach them. If they hold on to the current bar or reach for the next bar, their timing will be off and they will fall. Instead, they must let go fully to be ready for the swinging bar that is coming towards them, trusting the timing of the swing and not their own effort to reach. Whoa. Talk about trust, you guys. But this reminds me of something that actually one of my Patreon members was saying to me, and she's also a close friend of mine. She was just encouraging me to make some plans to go on a trip, and she said, you know, if you really want to do this and you feel like it's in your highest alignment, then just do it and make the plans, and the net will appear to catch you when you take the leap. And that is very viscerally true in terms of trapeze artists, because like she's saying, like they literally have to just trust themselves and their body and the entire process of doing what they do in order to face their fears, to be able to release and grab onto the next bar that's coming for them. I'm not a trapeze artist, but my experience of letting go feels very much like being suspended in midair with nothing to hold on to. So when I was trying to plan my trip, it just seemed like things were kind of like falling through. I didn't have anything solid to hold on to, but as soon as I committed to actually doing it, I bought my plane tickets to go out to California for a bit, and everything just started to fall into place. And even now, some things might still be up in the air, but as I try to do with all of my traveling, I just trust that when the moment is right, things will unfold and that I will be taken care of. And not necessarily relying on other people or extraneous situations to help me out or take care of me, but also having that trust within myself to know that, hey, maybe things won't work out exactly the way I envision them. Maybe something will, probably something will be different than what I'm originally planning, but I trust myself to be able to catch myself and change plans and take care of me if I need to, right? So I'm not a trapeze artist, but my experience of letting go feels very much like being suspended in midair with nothing to hold on to. It is raw, naked, vulnerable, and uncomfortable. I would much prefer to let go when I for sure know what is coming. Who agrees? And when I have let go, I want to somehow stay connected, just in case I want that thing back. To let go completely feels like a suspension in the void. The practice of non-clinging is as free as swinging from bar to bar effortlessly in perfect trust and perfect timing. Any kind of holding too long or grasping too far forward in an effort to maintain a sense of security is deadly to our spiritual growth and the natural unfolding of our lives. Reminds me of something that I've also heard often in spiritual communities, which is that in divine timing, or in having faith and trusting the divine plan or the unfolding of nature, whatever kind of term you want to give to it, whatever ends up happening when we release, and the phrase is like let go and let God, or again, replace whatever term that you feel most comfortable with, but when I let go and trust that divine timing, something unfolds that is even more magical and amazing than I could have ever tried to even imagine for myself, or like strictly plan for myself. You know, I could go through and try to plan every tiny detail, but like I said, odds are things are probably going to change anyway, because that is the nature of this reality, is change. And so letting go and letting God opens up this wonderful space for the most exciting and spontaneous, interesting, sometimes scary because it's different and unknown things to happen. But again, my experience has been that even if things are sometimes challenging because I didn't expect them, or maybe a little bit frustrating or scary or worrisome, again, just because I am not familiar, all in all, the situations always end up being a lot more amazing, expansive, and just exciting than anything that I possibly could have planned for myself. So that's my experience with faith and travel specifically. Any effort, any kind of holding too long or grasping too far forward in an effort to maintain a sense of security is deadly to our spiritual growth and the unnatural unfolding of our lives. Let go of the banana, this section is called. I am fascinated by an ancient process of capturing monkeys in India. Like the breath and the trapeze artist, this process gives us insights into how we stay attached to objects of life and how deadly they can become. In this process of catching monkeys, small cages with narrow bars are made and a banana is placed inside the cage. The monkeys come along, reach in between the bars and grab the banana. Then the monkeys begin the impossible task of trying to pull the banana through the bars. And here's the amazing thing. In the moment when the monkey catchers come along, the monkeys are totally free. There is nothing keeping them from running off to safety as they hear danger approach. All they have to do is let go of the banana. But instead they refuse to release the banana and are easily taken into captivity. We are just like those monkeys, aren't we? Bananas, for us, are anything we expect to give us the same fulfillment the second and third time. When we expect our spouse to make us feel good like they did the evening before, or when we expect a dinner out to satisfy us like it did the last time, or when we expect to be appreciated like we were yesterday. Indeed, anytime we want the same feel-good results, we are holding on to the banana. Our expectations keep us captive and often disgruntled. Do you see that? So oftentimes it's not actually the situation that is happening in the present moment. It's our attachment to wanting a certain outcome from that situation that is actually causing us suffering. Because to completely be free from attachments or expectations or hopes or essentially desires, to be completely free from desires is to be free from, is to be just totally free, right? Because you aren't depending on anything specific happening for your contentment. You just feel content in the present moment, whatever that means. So it is our expectations that keep us captive and often disgruntled. We can change our expectations more easily than we can change others' behavior or circumstances or situations that are just out of our control. The one thing that we normally can change with a lot more ease is our attitude, right? Our perceptions. The image of the monkey holding onto the banana is real for those of us captured in our attachments. Indeed, nothing is holding us. We, like the monkeys, are totally free. Instead, we choose to hold on, choosing our attachments and our greed rather than our freedom. To choose freedom, we simply need to let go of the banana. Instead, we create our own prison of captivity. What we hold begins to hold us. As illustrated in the following example, captivity can also be an image of ourself that we insist on holding. Ooh, cliffhanger. Because we're halfway through the chapter, you guys, so I'm going to stop there and we'll read the other half next week. But I think those are some really good, clear examples. This is probably one of my favorite chapters in the book, just because I feel like for me, it's something that is like rather straightforward. I know that there are certain kind of questions that tend to come up around non-attachment. For example, how can I be non-attached to my child, or something like that. And for those type of situations, I would say that it's less about like actually being attached to your child in the sense we equate attachment with love, especially in the West. That is our kind of cultural narrative. And in fact, I am of the opinion that the deepest love is unconditional love. And when we unconditionally love someone, we love them no matter what they do or no matter what circumstances come into our lives. And I don't have children, so it's probably not the easiest for me to speak on this subject, but I would say that if I thought about having a child, I would hope that I could do my best to love that child as unconditionally as possible. And with partners, even friends, things like that, I do try my best to love people as unconditionally as possible, to accept them as they are in the present moment, because that's what I would hope that someone could do for me. And so when we're not attached to how someone behaves or what someone does or how it makes us feel or how it makes us look, how their actions reflect back on us, then we can love from a much less conditional place, from a place of more expansion and spaciousness. And yes, of course, easier said than done. It definitely takes practice, but this is something that I've really been wrapping my mind around for the last several years. And it also doesn't mean that we are passive, right? It doesn't mean that we don't set boundaries. It doesn't mean that we don't respect ourselves and require others to respect us and negotiate to have our needs met in certain relationships. But I guess what I've learned is that it's easier to love someone from afar sometimes, and maybe that's the best way that I can unconditionally love them, is by actually not being directly in interactions with them every day. And depending, of course, on who that person is and the situation, you know, it's not always practical or even possible, but it's just something to keep in mind, you know, if we're able to stay out of this place of attachment toward how other people treat us or how other people treat themselves or what other people are doing, then we're able to remove a whole lot of our own suffering, right? And that's really what these teachings are about. It's not about fixing other people, it's not about controlling other people or changing the outside world or anything like that. It's about being introspective, looking in and realizing, hey, this is the experience that I'm having. What can I do within myself to empower myself to feel better, to not continue to have this pattern of feeling of deep suffering or feeling frustrated or angry or hurt. to not continue to put myself in relationships that don't serve me or situations that don't serve me. So that's really what the Yamas and Niyamas are about, and it's really what yoga philosophy to me is about. How can we minimize our own suffering by not by changing the outer world or other people, but by doing the work on ourselves and changing our own internal perceptions and attitudes. So this is a lot. Thank you guys for being here with me and sharing with me. Oh, I almost forgot. So at the end of every chapter, she does give some questions for exploration. So we just read the first half of this chapter today. I will read the second half in next week's video. But between now and next week, there's a few little assignments that you may want to ponder on to help you integrate the knowledge from this chapter. So week 1. This week, pay attention to your breath. Let the simple act of inhaling and exhaling teach you about the fullness of breathing in life without the need to hold on to it. Journal your observations and experience. And then the second assignment this week, look at the physical things you have surrounded yourself with. Do these things make you feel free and light, or do they have a hold on you and make you feel heavy? Remember, what you cling to clings to you. Experience the difference between enjoyment and attachment. So again, we can go back to the chocolate cake example again. If I am on my third piece of chocolate cake, maybe I'm still enjoying it. Probably not, honestly, at that point. But by the time I get to the fourth piece, if I'm still attached to that same pleasure and enjoyment that I got from eating the first piece, then I'm going to be disappointed when the fourth piece doesn't bring the same result, right? So just noticing where you do that in your life, whether it be with substances, food, or even sleep, or other people, or certain activities, situations. No judgment, no saying this is wrong or right, just simply noticing, and do some journaling about it, just observation. This is mindfulness, observing, becoming aware of your habits and tendencies, unconscious or conscious, whatever it is, shining the light of more consciousness on it, becoming more aware of it. And the journaling will help you do that. Once we're aware of it, then these things become harder and harder to continue to just keep doing unconsciously, because we're no longer unconsciously doing it. We're doing it and realizing that we're doing it. And from there, we can observe the effects of whatever it is we're doing and decide from a conscious place whether or not we want to continue doing that, when we see if the effects are beneficial to us or actually harmful to us in some way. So pay attention to the breath, and then look at the physical things you've surrounded yourself with, and decide for you if these things are lightening your load or just weighing you down. Is it beneficial, or is it a distraction or some kind of obstacle? Thank you guys for being here with me. Again, if you've enjoyed this video, I really appreciate you liking, subscribing, sharing, and as always, feel free to reach out to me, and I'd love to hear your insights and reflections on this. Until next week, I love you guys. Talk soon.